You see, something's going to happen.
What? What's going to happen?
Something wonderful.
What?
I understand how you feel. You see, it's all very clear to me now.
Welcome to the Occult Rejects. This episode, you already know, we got Miguel Connor with us tonight with Occult Elvis. But before we introduce him, I'm going to introduce the rest of the crew and the rejects with us tonight. I got myself, obviously, and I got Heidi Love with me. Heidi, let everybody know what your deal is and where they can find your amazing work.
Awesome. I'm Heidi Love of the Unfiltered Eyes. You can find me everywhere podcasts are served, and love to see you there. I also have my own website, unfilteredeyespodcast.com.
Awesome. And your links will be in the bottom. And Jin the Ninja, what is up, my man? Thank you very much for joining us. Please let everybody know what your deal is.
Well, I'll say, first of all, thanks, boss, for having me on. Of course, I love doing these panel shows. Thank you, Heidi, Julia, Ethan, Robby, of course, and Miguel. Obviously, like a lot of young, I'm not that young, but maybe like a little younger than you, Nick. So I'll say I'm young. And like a lot of young magicians will say, I've listened to Miguel's show for a long time. So I'm quite excited. And yeah, I think it'll be really great. So if people want to follow me, they can follow me on Twitter, X, Wukong Reborn, WKONG Reborn, or the show, Threshold Saints at Spotify and Apple.
Awesome. You know, that is something I do want to mention, too. I don't know if I mentioned it last time when I had you on, Miguel.
Anything. What is this?
But just like Rune Soup, I used to listen to Miguel back in the day, too, when I was practicing. So it's actually kind of unreal to be like, wow, this guy's on my show, and I used to listen to his stuff when I was studying the occult. Like, It's pretty mind-blowing, so yeah, I get it. Cosmic Peach Julia, please let us know what is going on.
Well, if you haven't found me yet, you never will. But I'm happy to be an occult reject, so you can find me here every now and again.
Yes.
I have Cosmic Peach podcast, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Oh, I was going to say, I do have an Instagram, cosmic.peach.podcast. If people want to work with me, the best way to do it is to go to Instagram and email me from my link tree, because I never check that inbox. So that's the way to do it. But thanks for having me, Nick. This is going to be a good one.
Hell yeah, of course. No, and thank you for joining us. Ethan Indigo, my man, what is up? Let everybody know what your deal is.
Peace on earth. Honored to be here with everyone. Always excited to learn, communicate with you guys. Big fan of everyone, honestly, and I'm excited to hear Miguel's presentation. Recently put out an article on Occult Research Institute, where the Occult Rejects have a bunch of writing, of course, and yeah, I'm a ne'er-do-well writer, so that's and I think a link to my writing is below. Yes. Thanks so much, Nick, and everyone.
Of course, sir. And Robby Marx, the OG himself. Let everybody know what's up with you, sir.
Yeah, so namaste to everybody here. And I just want to say, Miguel, I've been excited about this Occult Elvis project since you started talking about doing it. But I am R. Marx or Robby Marx. You can check out my artwork, my podcast, all my miscellaneous things that I have at my link tree at linktree RMARX. And that'll get you everything.
Hell yeah. Awesome. Thank you very much. And last but not least, my favorite garbage can dude, JJ Vance, not the vice president. What is up, sir? How are you? And I think you are muted.
Hey, there we go. Technical difficulties. Nick, greetings, sir. Appreciate the invite. Miguel, nice to meet you, sir. Looking forward to hearing about some Occult Elvis. Big fan of the King myself, and nice to see all the fellow Occult rejects here this evening. JJ Vance, not the vice president, host of Operation GCD, and resident garbage can dude, true crime expert here at the Occult Rejects. Awesome. Expert nothing except for being an expert nothing. That's what I'm an expert in.
Pretty much. Same here. I think I can say the same thing. All right. So finally, we got through all that about 5 minutes later. Now we're going to get to the guest, Miguel, Aeon Byte. I'm sure most people know who you are already. I mean, you're a staple in the occult community at this point. I mean, you have been for a while. Just let everybody know who may not know who you are, what your deal is, and what you're all about, sir.
Oh, man, thanks for having me on. But, God, all this talk, I feel like I feel like you're wheeling in some old dinosaur. I'm like the fat Elvis of podcasting, you know. And I'm in for one last show.
He's going to be in Vegas soon.
Exactly. But yeah, just Miguel Connor, host of Aeon Byte, author of the Occult Elvis. Yeah, love what you guys do. When I was writing the book, I'd often go into your podcast, the Occult Rejects, because it's nice. Sometimes it's relaxing to see people shoot the shit organically. You know, it's kind of rare actually. So it was fun. And sometimes I'd be like, we're working on the book, or God, I wonder if Nick's been banned from YouTube again. That was always my because it's happened so many times. I was like,
yeah, this is the fourth channel.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, will he make it this time? Will be this will be the one, you know?
Yeah. You know what gets bad? The only strikes I get anymore from William Ramsey on my show. It's so weird. It's like the funniest thing.
Really?
Yeah, it's the only time I get strikes anymore. Oh, and Julia.
Uh-oh.
I was going to say me, for sure, and William, who I just talked to today. We did something on the Catcher in the Rye, and we're not even going to try to put that one on YouTube.
Oh, nice. All right, so Miguel, Occult Elvis. I mean, I'm assuming you're probably a huge fan of him, and that's why you got into him. But like, what made you pick? Or maybe you weren't a fan of him. No, really. Okay. So what made you decide to even get into covering Occult Elvis then?
Oh, well, Elvis had other plans, I suppose. I never was an Elvis fan. I was always a Beatles person.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't know if you young whippersnappers have ever watched the original theater release of Pulp Fiction. You can't find it. It's the original release. Tarantino took it out.
Yeah, you mentioned this in your book, right?
Yeah, there's a Mia Wallace, Uma Thurman, daughter of the great Buddhist scholar. She's filming John Travolta, Vincent Vega, and the camera, and she goes, there are only two type of people in this world, Elvis fans and Beatles fans. They can like each other, but they're very different. Who you are says everything about you. Then later, in this one you can find, after they go on the date, she goes, I think I know if you're an Elvis or a Beatles fan, but it makes more context without that scene that Tarantino deleted. So I was always a Beatles fan forever. Now I'm an Elvis fan, and I explain in the book what it is to be an Elvis fan. But I never thought much of Elvis. I thought he was like the music version of Mountain Dew or McDonald's, or whatever, and something like that. And as I got older, I started appreciating him, his impact and everything. And I did read a book about him like 10 years ago, a biography that mentioned some of his, esoteric practices. But that was at a time when I was studying the occult, and I was like, oh man, all these rock stars and artists are into weird stuff. Bowie was into Kabbalah, and Page into Thelema, and the Beatles into him. It's just what they do on the side to help them with their music. Didn't think about it, was still a Beatles fan. And then summer of 2022, I ran into all these, you might say, roadblocks that changed my mind, or these directions having to do with 2 ayahuasca rituals, visions, synchronicities, everything. My world was just turned upside down. And through that, suddenly this voice started saying, Elvis, there's something I have to say. And I became completely obsessed with the King. I could only listen to his music in the car. I had to watch, his movies, documentaries, and just couldn't stop thinking about it. And finally I just surrendered. I just said, I believe that all of us have a mission, and the mission is very simple. You either listen to God or your soul or your destiny, or you're going to be in a lot of pain. And I'm old enough to, when these things happen, I just lean into it and I don't ask questions because I'm tired of the pain. So on February 2023, I just sat down with that one biography and I just started writing. And in 3 months, the whole book came out of me. As I like to say, it's like my tagline. I became quantum entangled with Elvis. We became almost one. And this, and there's many reasons why this book had to happen. We can talk about them, but it was just something he wanted me to do. It's like doing a favor for a friend. Sometimes if friends ask you for a favor, maybe it's to move the couch, maybe it's to this, and you just go, all right, I'll just do it. And I did it, and I'm very happy I did it for him.
Is part of the favor being like maybe stuff was not noticed that he was trying to say?
Yeah, it wasn't noticed because this stuff is hidden in plain sight. As you guys know, Elvis was like he was like the conspiracy world before conspiracy. He was on the tabloids and the documentaries and the bad blog posts and all that. Elvis landed from a spaceship and Elvis did that. Everything I got from biographies that are, very well lauded biographies. They came from friends, family, Priscilla, the things that he saw, his supernatural visions and magic abilities and what he practiced and what he read. It was always with a lot of witnesses around him. There were people around him and you can't trust them. And even his UFO encounters, I detail 3 or 4 in the book. He was never alone with them. It's not like he went, I had a UFO encounter. There were people there. They happened in Graceland, in his Bel Air mansion, and somewhere in the desert. So everything I got, I just pruned from all these biography and newspaper articles, and everything had, or 95% had eyewitnesses to it. So, and it was all there, and it was up to me to bring it all together in one book and also try to explain why he's probably the most remarkable person in the 20th century. And that's something that, David Lynch said. That's something that Leonard Bernstein said. So many people says that the greatest icon in the 20th century is Elvis. He is America. He represents America, everything good and bad. And my argument is that, we are losing our identity. This country's fragmenting. If we want to know what it is to be an American, the spirit of Elvis is what's going to get us through the other side. So I put all these ideas of Elvis on a high level through a Jungian lens, a Steiner lens, an alchemy lens, a psychological lens, even a UFO lens, just so we can understand who this figure is and maybe understand why he rose so fast and also crashed so hard at the end. Why did Elvis leave the building so early? And it's always going to be a mystery, but I try to give ideas so that the reader can make up their mind.
So you do believe that he is, RIP then? Because, there's always, there's theories that he didn't really die when he died and,
Oh, yeah. I do focus a chapter on it, and there's so many, and they're great conspiracies, great rabbit holes to have fun with.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think at the end, his body did leave. I do show that he knew he was going to die. He predicted it. He told friends. Even his death is almost a ritual when you look at it, even, on the throne. I mean, it's all symbolical, and he predicted that day I was going to leave. But his material body did leave, and people are always like, well, he could have been did he go underground on the witness protection?
Sure.
Did a mob?
Yeah,
did he move to Argentina? But then
Argentina with Hitler.
Elvis fans say, look, number one, Elvis had more power than the president, and he was mob connected. He was connected with the DEA. He said what was going to happen. That's just the way he was. Number two, if there were 2 people that were important in his life at the time, was Lisa Marie and his father, Vernon. He would never have abandoned them. He would have taken them with him if, I'm going to move to Argentina or become a pastor in Arkansas. Elvis would have not left his family. It's just not something he did. I think that's the best argument.
What do you think about his relationship with Priscilla? Because there's so much stuff people say about how young she was and like when they met and like after she moved to Graceland and it's like weirdness and stuff. Like what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah. There's many thoughts about that. Again, many theories of why this happened. I lean a lot simply on her bio, Elvis and me, and you can watch it in the Sofia Coppola movie, Priscilla, and it's okay. It gives you a picture, but my theory or the way I approach it is that Elvis was it's hard to say. There was an Oedipus thing with Elvis because he lost his twin when he was born, and Gladys could not conceive. and they were so poverty. Gladys became very possessive, and unfortunately, it's we call it helicopter parenting, but you could call it, it's called lethal enmeshment or enmeshment, where the mother won't let the child grow, so the child their egos never develop, and they become this extreme of proxy husband plus little playful naughty child. And she basically destroyed his psyche, I mean, from the get-go. And it's a lot of damage. It's serious stuff. We may joke about it. So when she died at only 46, and he was in his early 20s, right before he was going into the army, he was completely crushed. That archetype of the mother was just taken away. And he felt guilty because he always said, I don't care about the money. I want to make my mom happy. That's why I'm a millionaire. But she hated the fame with a passion because her proxy husband was out there with other women touring, and she started drinking, taking pills. So he felt guilty that I gave my mom the fame and she died because of it. And even his father once blamed us, said, you killed your own mother. He never recovered. It was kind of a deal with the devil, right? You want fame? I got to take something from you. But it was so crushing that he became obsessed with the idea of the mother, and anybody who looked like his mother, he lost it. Like that. Why did he get into theosophy? Because he saw a photo of Madame Blavatsky, was like, mommy. And when he saw Priscilla, he saw that something about her reminded him of his mother, and he couldn't let go. He could have had any woman of any stature in the world at any time, but he had to have Priscilla, and he had her. And as Priscilla writes, they did not consummate the marriage until they did not consummate the relationship either until they got married or right before. I think she slips a few times, that maybe right before, and everybody said she was the one who wanted it. Elvis was like in his spiritual kick and was like, no, we must wait and this and that, but it was Priscilla. So that's why it happened.
Like, come on,
yeah,
dude, please.
Yeah,
She had hot draws.
Come on, let's go.
Oh,
she was ready to get some action, some Elvis action.
Had to hide in the
She saw
closet.
his dance. She saw his pelvis moving. Pelvis Elvis. She wasn't going to jump on that. Come on.
But she was in her early 20s. That's all. I mean, she was in her early 20s whenever they decided it was time, or whenever it happened. So
was she into like all this stuff with him? Was she doing like magical stuff, you think, or?
No, she
Scientology, right?
Later, yeah, she did join Scientology. Elvis hated Scientology.
Oh, I was going to bring that up. I had that written down. Yeah, I noticed
he
you
hated
mentioned that.
Scientology, right?
What was the reason for that?
His wife and daughter loved it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Lifelong Scientologists, both of them, right?
Yeah, and he hated them. They say he avoided it like the cobra. It was a godless religion. He was very accepting of all religions because he believed, if you're looking for God, I respect you, except for Scientology.
Sure. I've always wondered how Scientology took that. You know what I mean? Because they don't like when families badmouth their family members about being in Scientology. That's a big no for old Zeno.
Yeah, but once he was gone, that's when Priscilla and Lisa Marie got into it really knee deep. So
okay, I thought that she grew up, and I thought they was like more of the 1960s movement type of situation for Priscilla.
No, it was in the 70s. In the 60s, she was with Elvis, and she hated his occultism and mysticism.
Oh, really?
Because he started becoming so detached to the material world and so spiritual that she wasn't, no more attention. He wasn't giving her the attention as a woman that she wanted. And he almost quit the music industry to be a monk, a Christian monk and an Hindu monk. And it was all just too heavy for it. For example, Elvis loved Manly P. Hall and wanted to go to his lectures, but Elvis could not go to anywhere because chaos would ensue, right? He had to stay alone. So he would send Priscilla to go listen to Manly P. Hall, write notes, and bring him to him, and he was very happy. But she hated his spirituality. So did Colonel Parker, the Memphis Mafia, because he was really out of control. I mean, he was like meditation circles with groupies, and reading at night and meditating and practicing this magic, and he just drove everybody crazy because he hated his fame. He was done with it. It meant nothing to him. And so it drove him crazy. But eventually there was this concerted campaign to put wedges between him and his spiritual teachers and this. And eventually they didn't win. What happened is he went underground secretly, like he'd keep his books in Vegas and all that. And I say how he turned into Vegas Elvis is very occult, the whole Egyptian, all that. I think he transferred that energy into his Vegas act, but he was still, till the day he died, he was really into the Western esoteric tradition, Eastern traditions, and anything.
Are you familiar with Tuesday Weld at all? No.
Tuesday.
JJ, do you know who I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah.
One of my favorite characters in life.
Dude, she's like a witch, right? She's like a priestess.
She's a Babylon.
Or something.
Yeah, she's a Babylon priestess.
According to Anton LaVey, she is. Yeah.
Yeah, Anton LaVey had,
from what I understand.
Well, Anton LaVey had some kind of dedication to her in his satanic Bible. It was like Marilyn Monroe, Tuesday Weld, Jane Mansfield. But Tuesday Weld and Elvis were like this. They were like besties.
I knew they knew each other because they acted together. I didn't know how. I was curious to know how the relationship went.
Yeah, there's even pictures of them where he's giving her a big smooch.
Oh, that's
and,
they did a movie together.
Yeah, I think that there could have been a romance there, but it just like with the kind of like the topic of the episode. If she was into all that and they were besties, I can only imagine what Elvis may have learned from her.
Oh, for sure. And LaVey elaborates on his dedication to Tuesday Weld in a 1972 book called Modern Witchcraft. So he speaks of her being very involved in the rituals.
She's really interesting, but I wondered if you had come across her with Elvis, because I know that they hung out and they were friends or whatever. But do you think like even him, like how he was discovered and everything is kind of ritualistic? Because I've seen this studio in Memphis where he recorded some of his first stuff, and it's like
Memphis, Egypt.
black triangles on the ceilings.
Studios, right?
It's like really in your face.
You been there, Miguel?
I've been.
Yeah, I've been to Sun Records.
And Robby Marx, nice. Yeah. Good for you guys.
So Miguel,
sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say I'd always known Elvis was into theosophy, and it was kind of just a loose fact in the wind. And I came across I collect vinyl, and I came across one of his country records that has 12 songs, and in between each song is and advertised it on the record, a secret 13th song. And I thought that was kind of interesting in regard to the whole ideas of esoteric philosophy. But like, did he actively kind of push those ideas through his merchandising and his other things that he was putting out?
I would say yes or no. Again, his Vegas manifestation is very magical. There are reports he would stop doing concerts and do like Tibetan prayers here and there. There are times when he'd go into an altered state of mind. Maybe he was on drugs. But yeah, I mean, he wore an ankh even the day he died. And all that. I mean, starting out with the theme from 2000 and Space One and all that. It was a big shamanistic ritual. And people, there's not a lot of footage, but people who went there said they were really transformed. And again, he never hid it, but he didn't advertise it. He was always passing out books, always wanted to talk to musicians and people about different spiritualities and so forth. I say that he really was part of seeding the 60s and 70s occult and hippie movement, because he was always there handing out books, doing circles, lesson circles, teachings in Hollywood and Memphis, and just spreading this stuff and making it cool. Even martial arts. When Elvis got his black belt in 1958, he was only one of 100 people in the United States with a black belt, and the country was 170 million. That's esoteric. And through the 60s and 70s, he got more black belts, and people started, oh, this is really cool. I mean, he made karate and these things kind of cool. So he he was very important. And we have to understand the United States was very like a wasteland. It wasn't like Western Europe when it came to the occult. There was really nothing. You had, you know, the West Coast, the East Coast, Theosophical Society in Wheaton. There was nothing. You had Elvis and the beat writers, you know, Burroughs, Ginsberg, all those guys, Kerouac, who were talking about Eastern. Nobody was talking about Buddhism or Taoism and all that. And Elvis was one of those. In fact, he used to go to the Yogananda ashram because he started working under Yogananda's successor, Dayamata. He'd go there to meditate. He did that like years before George Harrison started doing it. So he was way ahead of the curve. And I think he's one of the reasons it became acceptable. And like I said, he was seeding this stuff. But again, it was not something he wore on his sleeve. It was just, he had passion about it. You know, like, you have passion about the Giants. You meet somebody, hey, what about the Giants? Or, you know, you just...
Yeah, I was gonna say, do you feel like he was almost leading like a secret life, though? It was like he had all this going on the side, but nobody knew about it. Like in the public, they wouldn't go, "Oh, Elvis, that guy that's really into Buddhism." You know, it's almost he had like a secret life.
Like
it does. It's almost like an image thing. It's almost like an image because even though he would wear this Aztec or Egyptian outfits and do that, people still had this image of Elvis as a Southern conservative boy, but everybody in his inner circle and friends and Hollywood, they knew it, and it was just part of it. Elvis did what Elvis wanted to do, and it was really as simple as that. And for some reason, I think a lot of it is, there was a time when people just thought, oh, these Hollywood people or rocks, they're eccentric, you know, the Beatles and Hinduism, Ronald Reagan and astrology, and man, oh, it's just what they do, and we kind of shelve it, we put it away, and then you realize, no, these things really shape their personalities, their worldviews, their art. I mean, this was essential to who they are as beings. And I think we're ready now to see it. I mean, there's been a book out on, you know, the occult, Jim Morrison, Sylvia Plath, and we're realizing this is essential and important and history changing and personality changing. And I think we're ready as a culture to really, really see it instead of kind of turning our eye to one side or something.
Did he write his own stuff? Oh, sorry.
What do you feel about the catastrophic things that have happened on his bloodline? Like, you have implications there? Anything?
Yeah, hell yeah. I deal with that too. I mean, Priscilla once said, well, aren't you think Elvis would have survived? How would it have been? And Priscilla's like, no, there were demons in his family. And she says the lineage is cursed. And I show that through his mother, Gladys maybe, you know, she abused him, and I can't blame him. I mean, she lost her twin. She was then they went to the hospital. She said she couldn't conceive. So of course she's just going to grab onto Elvis with everything she had. But she was known to have visions. She would see demons at night. She had premonitions. Her and her husband could heal at a touch, which Elvis adopted. Elvis talks about how her and her mother in Mississippi could astral travel, but they both kept it hush because they were worried about the church. So he got this lineage, and of course the gifts also are the curses. There's a darkness to these powers, and got it from Gladys. I don't know if it's because of their native blood or their Jewish blood. I don't know. Some lineage of magicians went through Gladys, through Elvis, and eventually to Lisa Marie. From what I hear, and I'm just doing the research, Lisa Marie had UFO encounters. So there was some sort of curse, or
because they glossed over her poor son. You know, there was some. I mean, all of that. It's just all of them. It's like the JFK all over again. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm just getting started on that. I haven't gone down too deep that rabbit hole.
Well, I just will jump in and say one thing quickly, since we have Heidi and JJ on, is that also Nick and I did a series, and Nick, Lisa, and I did a series on Nick Barrett, or Sid Barrett, excuse me, from the band. I can't even think right now.
Pink Floyd.
Pink Floyd.
That's right. And so he was involved with Sikhism, and I'm a Buddhist, so for me, that's not a particular branch of Dharma that I'm that familiar with, but looking into it, it does seem to have a lot of branches into these kind of celebrity occult networks seems to be like Sikhism, which is an interesting maybe side point, but also they were married on May 1st, 1967. I think 1967, JJ might find that an interesting date. And then also for Heidi, they were married at the Aladdin Hotel. Well, you know, we discussed another magician, Howard Hughes, who, you know, everybody's favorite magic city, Vegas.
On May Day, huh?
Something I did want to ask you, Miguel, was he almost kind of like a conspiracy theorist in a sense too? Because I think I had heard you. I heard you mention
he was red pill before red pill was cool. So he was. Again, he would be having fun with us right now. He would be fun. Twitter, he'd be going crazy on Twitter and all that because, he certainly had a conspiracy sensibility. He never, right after JFK was killed, he was on the radio saying there's no way it's a lone gunman. Same with Robert F. Kennedy. He was sure that with Bruce Lee there was foul play.
That's dope as fuck.
He thought the Vatican was holding secrets, and he was really mad. It's like,
why does no one know this side of him? Like, I always imagined him as like kind of a dope, like that went to go visit Forrest Gump one time and like learned how to do the moonwalk thing. I mean, but there's just like this image of Elvis. It's like, oh yeah, kind of like the very first Beatles stuff, like bubblegum. Kind of like, oh yeah, it's Elvis, you know, whatever. I've watched what is that movie with it's the story of Johnny Cash, but he's in it.
Walk the Line.
Walk the Line. And because Johnny Cash always said, oh, Elvis got me on pills, Elvis this, Elvis that. So like, do you think he's a good guy? Do you think he's just somewhere floating in the middle? Like, who is he?
Yeah, well, I can tell you he was a brilliant. He was an occultist. He was a mystic. He had magic powers, as I show in the book. He was a visionary and a very smart guy. Even the big bio, Peter Polinak, I forget, it's called The Last Train to Memphis, talks about how he was a brilliant thinker. He would write. He would annotate books. You can go to Graceland and you see it. He wanted to know things. When he would, whether he was going to Vegas or movies, he always had a higher group of workers carrying 200 books because he would just read them. He really was almost a scholar mind, a brilliant person and a brilliant thinker. Again, he had terrible demons, you know, as Heidi is saying. So he always had that struggle, but really, a unique individual. He really was the king. And I call him the philosopher. Right?
True occultists, they're never all dark or all light. It's usually the dark and the light. So that's what I meant by my little
quote. Gordon, which I had recently, and it always sticks with me, that properly used magic will destroy your life. Mm-hmm. And I think that's right.
Well, like a good occultist, Elvis also was a spook, right? He was an undercover federal officer.
He tried. He really did try. Yeah. But he had an obsession with badges. He had an obsession with authority. But I think a lot of it's because he grew up so poor. Daddy went to jail, no justice, all that. Later on, he never wanted to be poor. He never wanted his family to suffer. So he had this thing. I think he did it also to piss off his dad about badges, authorities. He would go on drug raids dressed like, you know, with a ski mask. He met Nixon and got a DA badge. I think it was honorary. So yeah, he was obsessed with badge, but I don't think he really like officially worked. There's a dark side to it. I think also he liked power. I mean, he was the kind of guy that always had, you know, not only 4 black belts, but he was always armed to the teeth. Right. And there was one time he went commercial. He got mad. Yeah, he got mad with his dad and Priscilla. They were arguing about money because he's spending money like crazy. He's like, F you. He leaves Graceland, goes to the airport, shows up at the airport, goes to the lady. The lady's like freaking out behind the counter. He's like, I need a ticket to LA. Can you just bill me? And, yes, Mr. Presley. He goes in, security grabs him, and they're like, Elvis, you got all these guns. He's like, well, can I take him on the plane? And they're like, okay, if you give us an autograph and keep your mouth shut. And he went on the plane with all these guns. So he liked the power and the badge. And I think Priscilla always said the reason he wanted a DA badge was because he never toured any other country. He never left the United States to tour. Imagine the money. The guy made $4 billion in his career. Imagine the money he could have made in Japan and London, all that, because he wouldn't go anywhere without his guns and his pills. With a DA badge, you can take guns and drugs in and out of the United States. So
maybe that was his job.
Solid move. Well, I don't know how much involvement he had in the case, but he had an undercover FBI agent embedded with his team for a number of years there in the mid to late 70s, and something that was called Operation Fountain Pen, which happened to be one of the most integral cases in FBI history because it spun into things like Abscam, if you're familiar with Abscams. I don't know how much Elvis Undercover had involved with that, but he at least had undercover guys on his team, for that operation.
Yeah. It really had to do more with his dad, Vernon, because his dad was in charge of the planes and the money. Again, Elvis didn't have a wallet, no concept of money. It just wasn't, he said, buy me a plane, buy me a fleet of Rolls Royces. So it would have to do with Vernon more than Elvis. It's not something he really was involved.
Well, they would have been in the know of something though going on there, because that case dominoed into a series of other cases over the next almost decade.
Exactly. Yeah, it was a big thing. Yeah, for sure. But I don't think Elvis was directly involved. I mean, he was connected. Again, he was connected to the authorities, and he was connected to the mob. Right. But to Elvis, these were his citizens, his underlings, as far as he's concerned. This is the guy that could go to the White House unannounced and get a meeting with Nixon. That's how powerful he was.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He had a very unique angle, right? He saw every perspective, right, through these.
And he never voted. He could care less who was the president. It was just these things were irrelevant to him.
I like him already.
Because he knew.
A lot of his story seems very much like the fool archetype, or this kind of hero element of him, where he ignorantly was pursuing, not that he didn't have alter pursuits in wanting the badges and so forth, but that part of it just seems like he's just strolling through life trying to portray this giver of books and knowledge, and all these little hints of him just being this ignorant hero.
I do connect him to the trickster archetype, not the king archetype, and I think that's a valid one, because he was a trickster. A trickster brings people into a new world, whether it's the Changer or the Kyoto native lore or Loki, or they are the gods of the doorways, the door hinge, depends on Hermes. And Elvis brought this people, this country that had been decimated by the Great Depression and World War II, and brought these people to this new era where we were the most powerful empire history had seen. Satellites, nuclear bombs, mass media, and everybody's freaking out. And Elvis with his rock music, he and Johnny Cash and Jerry Lee Lewis and Little Richard were these sort of shamans who brought and gave the people medicine to be able to stand psychologically this change. I mean, the trickster's at the crossroads. He was at the crossroads of the old way and this new empire, the crossroads of the old way gender saw each other and the new sexuality. Elvis taught women how to objectify men. Women suddenly had a male gaze, and they could look at him and say, and this power, this kundalini, this eating of the fruit woke women up, but it taught men to be more sensitive because he looked so vulnerable. And he taught men, you don't have to be Gary Cooper. You can be like me or Marlon Brando, soft and sensitive. He brought people to the crossroads of the old religions to all this new spirituality, to this new music where, oh my God, we can listen to African-American music and Hispanic music. I mean, he was the Lord of the Crossroads and the trickster. That's what the trickster does. And again, I feel like he is a trickster because if this United States, I don't know what our next incarnation is going to be, but the trickster is the one that takes us. Mm-hmm. And if you trust the trickster, you're going to be all right. If not, bad things are going to happen.
So
Memphis.
you feel like he used his music as like a spiritual kind of modality? I was gonna say earlier, I don't know if he wrote his own stuff, but
No, that's a good point though. I think when we see rock music as a spirituality, it makes perfect sense because again, these guys like Johnny Cash and Elvis, they were pastors. The term rock and rolling started in Pentecostal churches when people would be grabbed by the Holy Spirit and they'd be like shaking. And then when rock music came out, these music critics would go to these concerts like, man, this is like a holy tent revival. What's going on? It's the same thing. They're not handling snakes and doing the Holy Spirit, but they're like shaking and going crazy. So, and rock music really is a fusion, as many critics have noticed. It's of gospel music and the blues. And by the blues, I mean the devilish, trickster, African animism.
Black Keys.
And this yeah, and Elvis always said, "I carry heaven and hell with me," and I got about what you meant: gospel music, heaven, the blues, hell. This fusion that was rock music, shamanistic, altered states, and it was a way to sort of free people and help people as the United States came into its new identity as this amazing empire that nobody had seen. As I show, using the work of Chris Knowles, you've got like. Here's technology in human history. Oh, look, the Sumerians. They kind of popped. Then we're put. Then in late 40s, 50s, we shoot up like never before. Nobody's ever seen that. We haven't, and we kind of stopped in the 21st century. What happened? Aliens? Whatever happened, it was a mind blown kind of thing. And you almost needed that trickster energy, that spirituality as a coping skill. And to answer your question, he never wrote songs because with Elvis, it was all about feeling the energy. He always said, I can feel like in gospel music and the blues, the plight of the black person who's disenfranchised, who's homeless. I feel that energy. Or gospel music, I feel these people crying out for Christ in the fields and all that. So Elvis was always about getting some music and making it its own and making it so unique.
Beautiful, actually, isn't it? I was raised Pentecostal. I can get on board with that.
I was gonna say, wasn't he exposed to that stuff?
Huh?
He was exposed to that stuff, wasn't he, as a younger?
I was gonna say Jerry Lee was. Jerry Lee came from gospel too.
They were all Pentecostals, and again, as scholars have said, Pentecostalism is Christian mystery school shamanism. It's got all it's all
sure
altered states of mind, healing your body, your mind, and that's what these guys were.
That's 100, dude. You should have seen the people at my church. They would be rolling around and shouting and jumping
rock and rolling.
I loved it. I thought it was great as a kid. I'd look forward to going to church. I'd even get in on it. But it's cool. I like where you went with that because it does sound like that, gospel, bluesy kind of cool sound. Yeah.
Yeah, and people used to remember Pentecost. Obviously people hated the blues in the 40s. Not just the whites, proper black people hated the blues with it because it was so corruptive and dangerous. But they had a problem with Pentecostalism too, because they used to say these Pentecostals, they're mixing Jesus and sex. That's all they're doing. And that became rock and roll.
Well, in Memphis, when you get into that Memphis area, just what is it? They call Helena, Arkansas area, West Memphis, which is basically where Robert Johnson went out and went to the crossroads and signed the deal with Papa Legba and came back. So that whole area is kind of really just like a prime place, for this kind of this energetic kind of music.
And guess what? Robert Johnson. He died the same day Elvis died. I bet they both made a deal. Yeah.
Shut up. They died on the same day?
Yeah. I think 35 years
Why did I think Robert Johnson was like 1,000,000 years old? He was
27. He was the first 27er.
Yeah,
I know, but I thought like it was like 1,000,000 years ago that he did that because all the pictures you see of him are like black and white. like holding a guitar. It just looks super old to me. I thought it was like in the 30s or something. But no, yeah, I saw that recording studio in Memphis, and I always thought it was kind of in your face a little bit, like with what they had going on.
And it's the Sun Studio.
Yeah, I was gonna say with that, with all the anthroposophy and everything, do you think he ever like channeled anything, you know, where he would act completely different? I mean, obviously he knew how.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, he certainly had altered states of mind. Again, the astral travel, he would do a lot. Yeah, he could change. He had the power to read minds. People would be freaked out because he could read you, know exactly what you're thinking, what you're going to do. When he was in a bad mood, he had a way of just crushing your soul, which was, he got it from his mother. You know, these people, they walk into the room and you can feel them just suck all the energy up. His mother could do it to anybody, no matter how rich they were when she were poor. And yeah, he had really powerful abilities. So
what was in your opinion, what do you think? I know you mentioned theosophy before. What do you think was like some of his I guess major influences when it came to the occult?
Oh my God, everything. You name it. Yeah, theosophy. He loved Yogananda, Manly P. Hall. But he got into really anything. Khalil Gibran's A Prophet, Gurdjieff, Hermann Hesse. He read Albert Pike. He loved Morals and Dogma. I mean, again, this guy was reading hundreds of books a week. And he wanted to know, because what happened is that he was really burned, you know, not just the death of his mother, but we have to forget Elvis came and it was like a nuclear bomb. You know, for 3 years, he was the most famous person on earth. He was already the GOAT, the king of rock and roll. It was, you know, a settle, kind of like Michael Jordan or Wayne Gretzky. You just know that's it. Nobody's going to come. You know it in your heart. But we have to remember that a lot of the country hated his guts. They hated how he was liberating women, how dangerous his music. I mean, the government was worried. The Christians were very pissed off. I mean, his own pastor said that he'd been possessed by the devil. Billy Graham went publicly and denounced him. People like Frank Sinatra were just pissed off. I mean, he was a threat, and he was completely burned by Christianity. So he was like, maybe these assholes are just, you know, it's a business, and I'm really angry at him. Plus, he had already said there's no way there's eternal hell. He'd already believed in reincarnation when he was a teenager. He just said it's just normal. It's just logically, it's a logical thing. So he was burned, and then he became kind of, after the army, he became disillusioned with his fame and all that. He met his spiritual teacher, Larry Geller, and the books that he got him gave him the Jesus he needed, which was the cosmic Jesus, the inner Christ, the wise teacher Jesus. So anywhere this Jesus was, whether it was the Gnostic Gospels or Manly P. Hall with the mystical Christ or theosophy, he was so happy to learn, and he was so happy to believe that we all have Christ within us. We all can bring this Christ, and some do, and these are some wise people throughout history that are there for the betterment of men. Maybe it's the Ascended Masters, maybe it's the Freemasons, maybe it's Buddha, Zoroaster, Jesus, but he was so happy that there was hope and we all had a Christ power within us. And he always hoped that he perhaps could be this next religious teacher, but he wasn't going to do it. He had to have the call. It's until I was self-actualized would he do it, and it never happened. But he was so hopeful. So all these traditions, and it went to the East, could be Taoism, Buddhism, gave him this hope, this idea of Christ consciousness, and a way to get closer to God, and also answer the big questions, because he always wondered, well, why did my twin die? We came out 30 minutes apart. Why did he die? Why was I born poor? If I'd been rich, we could have afforded a hospital instead of had a home. Why did I get stinking rich, but other people in the South are forgotten and they lived in squalor? So he was always trying to figure out the nature of evil and God and all that.
Was there an issue with the second baby's delivery? Was there like a placenta detachment possibly, and that's why she couldn't have any more kids? Do you know?
Yeah, I don't think we
Let me
know.
see.
I mean, yeah, it's a good question, but
Sorry, I'm a nurse. I was just kidding.
no, yeah, but one thing you find out is that if you grew up in the Great Depression in the South, you were forgotten. Doesn't matter what race you were. It was horrible. It was like North Korea living. So records are bad, and these people, like they said, where Elvis lived, it was on the wrong side of the tracks. It was so there was not records. They couldn't afford a hospital, so they had to have it in his little house. There was probably not a midwife. Jesse came first, right? Jesse came first. He came out stillborn. Elvis came out 35 minutes later. They put him in an oven because they were so paranoid. They heated it up. That's how paranoid. Then they went to the hospital, and then they simply told Gladys, that's it, you're done. So that was it was a horrible existence, because there was one time when Elvis had a fever and tonsillitis, and they went to the doctors like, I can't do anything for you. So they had to do like a prayer circle around him, and in a few hours they healed him. So you wonder why these people were leaning so much on the Holy Spirit a lot, because it's amazing this happened in this country. I still, even when I went to Mississippi, I went to Memphis, driving through Mississippi, I'm like, God damn, what's wrong with this country? These people are forgotten. Yeah. These people deserve better. We have all this money for wars, but we have these people in places like Mississippi, good people, and they're forgotten. And Elvis was even worse.
Projects with no doors and no windows. It's pretty bad.
It's incredible. It's incredible.
Yeah. May I add on something? Some of the themes of what you've been saying, Miguel, is I think he really kind of did succeed, as you're describing his initiate character of that trickster god. In a lot of ways, as we refer to the politics of the nation back then, it was divided in a very physical, ordained manner, and really, like, we couldn't even conceptualize combining karate with Hinduism and and Manly P. Hall and all these things that he was combining in what we consider today to be a really Americana kind of thing. But back then it wasn't. And as occultists, I think we all embody finding at least the comparative, if not the syncretic, which he actually put forth a syncretic, esoteric possibility. Like, oh yeah, I can be like Bruce Lee and Manly P. Hall, or what have you, even a baseball player and kung fu, any number of things. So he really, in a lot of ways, did initiate us into that potential.
Well said. No, I couldn't have said it better. It's true. Again, he was the Lord of the Cross, so he brought all this stuff, made it acceptable. Even black music. He did something that almost got him killed. He dated a black girl in high school.
Right.
The sheriffs almost ended his life. He would go, if he wanted to listen to gospel music, he would go to this church. He was the one at the back, isolated, segregated from the congregation. And he didn't care, because he was like, this shit is good. I don't give a shit. And he brought it out. It's same with spirituality, like I said, martial arts, so much. And even the media. Elvis knew how to use media and technology. He knew the importance of TV, satellites, the jukebox. He made it cool for the population to say, hey, this is not so, let's embrace this stuff. Let's see it.
What did he do with like these extraterrestrial encounters? Did he like try to tell people about them? Was it like hush hush? Like, I think that's kind of dope. Like Elvis, king of rock, extraterrestrial extraordinaire, shaman, occultist. Like, what the heck?
What was it? And he had a great voice. Sorry.
Right.
The dogs are getting excited. But he was so ahead of the curve when it came to UFOs. By the 60s, he believed in let's keep quiet. By the 60s, he already had very sophisticated views on UFOs. For example, he was one of the first people to read von Daniken's Chariots of the Gods. So he's like, maybe we are ancient aliens. He said he very much was voiced very loudly how the aliens were stopping us from destroying ourselves. And he believed in the star seed. I mean, these were ideas like us that he sort of balanced out. He'd read Ezekiel. He read Ezekiel, and he's like, these wheels got to be aliens. So very advanced. He read the book of Enoch and wondered, well, maybe they're aliens. You know, kind of today where the religion and ufology are no longer separated. Back then, it was very separated. He was one of the first pioneers to do that. And he always talked to, you know, again, he had his experiences of seeing UFOs, lights, and all that. He had it with his bodyguards, his spiritual teacher. So he would talk to them about it, but he never made it like, he never went to the press or anything like that. It wasn't, he used to say, yeah, even me, they'll think I'm crazy and put me away. And so he was very sophisticated in how he saw ufology. He read the book of Urantia. He read, he was very versed in the whole UFO thing. Very, very.
So did he think did he believe in heaven and stuff? Like what were his thoughts on that? Like,
yeah, that's a good one. He thought, and it's actually similar to what the Gnostics thought. He thought you are reincarnated, but it's all your choice, your adventure. If you choose a material path every reincarnation, you're going to go down, 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 and eventually just poof, disintegrate. But if you keep getting better every life, eventually you'll reach whatever, self-actualization, the light, God, whatever you want to call it. So it's a very sophisticated. I think the Gnostics had that idea that, you know, it's your choice. You get to choose. Nobody else chooses what's going to happen.
So do you think like Lisa Marie, like, and her mom, obviously, like, you would think growing up with this guy as a dad, you might have some of these same like beliefs and stuff, but they went totally left. They went Scientology. It just seems odd to me. It's like, if you had a cool dad like this, literally it's Elvis, and then she married Michael Jackson for a while. Like, I don't know what's going on with her, but Scientology, like, really? I don't get it.
They were predators, and he knew
Scientology made more sense, than the marriage with Michael Jackson. I was like, what the hell was that?
Like, literally, what is going on with her?
Well, Lisa Marie was just big into aliens, right?
Yeah, she was, but she was a young kid when he passed.
Michael's an alien.
Yeah, she was young, and I don't want to talk for Priscilla. When you look at Elvis fandom, he is... I don't know if it's fair or not. It's kind of, if you guys watch Breaking Bad, you ever notice everybody hates Skylar, but that's the last person you should hate. It's like there's so many other villains. You know, Walter White is far more evil than his wife. But so I try not to judge, but Priscilla is seen as almost the devil in the Elvis fandom. Lady Macbeth,
really?
Narcissist. So
she did have that red hair, though. Maybe he changed her.
You have to survive Elvis because when you lived with Elvis, it was always chaos every day. I mean, there was press, celebrities, always something going on. Elvis was always out of control, and he did what he wanted to do. I mean, he'd do stuff like he'd wake up and say, I'm in the mood for this fried peanut butter sandwich in Denver. You know, light up the planes. We're leaving in an hour. That's the kind of life he led. It was just Vegas. It was constant chaos. So to be in Elvis's orbit, regardless whether you're a bodyguard, a family member, it was out of control. It was exhausting. It was wonderful. It was a blast, but you could barely, I think that's the reason people didn't say more, because there was so much going on. How could you even stop to talk to the press about UFOs or something? It was just... Yeah,
in her book, she kind of makes him sound like a real POS. I'm not going to lie. Like, when I read her book, I was like, fuck this guy. Like, this guy.
Which one? Priscilla or Lisa?
Priscilla's book. It was kind of like, I mean, obviously after I read her book, I was like, oh, hell no. Some of the stuff, like... You know, but you get to a certain point where if you get married that young and you have that weird lifestyle, you're gonna at some point not like each other anymore. You're gonna grow up.
And you have to, and also you have to take it with a grain of salt. Like there's this, in the first edition of her book, there's a scene where before they broke up, Elvis essayed her, but she backtracked and took it out because she said, I was just angry at him. And then there's another one where she says Elvis always wanted me to have a bouffant and he controlled what I wore.
Yes, she did say that.
But when you look at pictures of her, she's got her hair down at the press, or she'd say Elvis didn't allow me to leave Graceland. But there's pictures of her in New York and jet setting. So again, things that happen between couples. Yeah, you want to take a side. I try not to. I mean, yeah, he was abusive. She was abusive. He was not faithful. She was not faithful. It's I don't know. Again, Elvis was cursed.
It was a shit show.
It just was.
And she was a child.
I was gonna say.
So. Yeah,
she was.
I mean,
she was so young, so young when they got married, and obviously, it's like that thing. Like if everybody wants to screw your husband. I mean, that's not a good place to be.
Well, then he didn't want to give it to her. So
that's what I'm saying. It's like,
oh,
it's like everybody wants to screw him and I can't even get any. Like, what is this about?
I know he's running around.
Master came in.
You're right. Probably some of his spiritual beliefs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He's running around with Aunt Margaret and she's at home.
Do you think that's part of his spiritualism, or do you think that's part of like him running around on her? Because I've always heard like you shouldn't give up your life essence every time you sleep with somebody. You're giving up like your life essence. This is like a big spirituality thing. And he really didn't have sex with Priscilla, like hardly ever. Maybe to have Lisa Marie, and then that was it after that.
Didn't he do sex magic though with some people?
That's what I thought. Yeah. Like there's got to be something to that.
Well, okay, here's one theory states, again, because remember, he's got the bad mommy issues. So it is said that he could not have sex with women who had conceived children, too much of a mother archetype. That was the issue. Now, there's evidence for it, but then there's evidence like Priscilla was in Piers Morgan, and she talked about when he went to Vegas in the 70s, they had the best fling ever. So it's hard, but that was an issue too, they say, with Elvis. And also you have to think too is people who lose their twins at a young age, twinless survivors, are always they're workaholics. They are seekers, but they are very self-destructive, addiction-prone, and can never have normal relationships. Then, of course, there's a problem. People who have enmeshment issues, lethal enmeshment issues, same thing. They have a propensity for addiction, they're self-destructive, and they can't have normal relations. So Elvis had the double whammy of, you know what I mean? And he even admitted, I think before he died, he looked at his friend Charlie Hodges and he quoted from Khalil Gibran's Love, love will crown you and crucify you. And he told him, I realized I'm 42 and I've never loved a woman properly. I can't believe I'm just learning this now. He was going to get married to Ginger Alden, but he finally at 42 was like, holy mother, I've just wasted my entire life and I've got to fix this. But, time ran out.
I'm shocked he didn't marry an older woman with his whole situation with the
Well, it'd have to be an older woman who never conceived.
Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of them at that. Yeah,
an older woman that looked like his mom who'd never conceived, who was into ritualism.
That's a very, very
Nick off.
No, it's just like such a small sliver. The population to choose from right there. Like, jeez, screwed.
So you said like he predicted his death and he would who did he tell? Did he have journals or something that somebody went back and read or?
Yeah, he told people things. He was he was acting differently, like making sure that documents and contracts were set. He remembered telling a friend out of nowhere, angels fly because they take themselves so lightly. And the way he said it to his friend freaked him out. He would drive from Memphis to Mississippi with a friend at night, and he would be looking under the house for his lost marbles. Just very strange behavior. And he dropped all these hints, and I show them in the book. But the most obvious one is 2 days before he passed, he was in his room just, on drugs and pain, just in his bed, but he was reading all these occult books and the Bible and all that. And his stepbrother, David Stanley, he called his stepbrother David Stanley to talk to him. His stepbrother needed advice. And then he turned to his brother and he said, I want to tell you something. In 2 days, I am going to be on a higher plane. And his stepbrother's, we got to catch a plane to Portland for the concert. And Elvis rolled his eyes hey, pearls, pearls for pigs. And, said, I love you and I'll talk to you. But he was right. 2 days, he was not around.
That's kind of crazy, actually, because I thought he was at the end of his life, he was just kind of fat and bloated and useless. Mm-hmm. Sorry, go ahead, Ethan.
Oh, no, thank you. Sorry, my computer was lagging. I heard a rumor that he also had some experiences when he was a child. Obviously, these would be more difficult to corroborate, but were there stories about these UFO experiences when he was a child? And can you break down the Lenin and Jesus cloud formation? Did you hear about that?
Yeah, I haven't heard anything about UFOs when he was a child. So that one I haven't heard. What was the second question before the Lenin one?
I saw when he was driving between Memphis and LA that he saw a cloud formation of Lenin and then Jesus, if that's, I believe, right?
Yeah. It was he had been practicing spirituality. He was very earnest and reading a lot. And they were driving from Memphis to LA. He didn't like to fly for some reason for years. So they drive these mobile homes. And he was driving and he was frustrated and he got angry at his spiritual teacher and said, look, I'm doing this thing. I don't feel I'm getting closer to God. And his teacher gave him this Zen parable where the teacher puts and tells a student to pour it and the water comes out and the student's freaking out and said, yes, your cup is too full. The only way for God to come in is you got to empty yourself. So you need to chill out with the studying and all that and just let God come to you when he's ready. So then they had this discussion. They're driving through Arizona and he and his spiritual teacher, Larry Gello, look up and they both see the clouds are forming and it turns into the ultimate visage of evil, which back then was not Lenin, it was Stalin. So it became the face of Stalin mocking, and Elvis pulls to one side. And remember, there's a whole convoy of these, and he runs into the desert with Larry, and he's facing this thing. And Elvis is basically saying, I just realized I am not empty, and there's a lot of evil in me, and now evil is showing itself in the world, in the sky. So he went to this demon or whatever and said, look, if this evil is within me, destroy me. I get it. Take me off the chessboard. I wasn't able to do it this lifetime. I'm humbly, bowing down. And then suddenly this evil went down into him, but turned into Jesus, and he was filled with the power of Christ. And he felt this bliss that he had never felt before. And again, his friend Larry was there, and they both started hugging each other. And Elvis, I'll never doubt. I know there is a God. I know there is a purpose. So it was a very powerful mystic experience that, again, kept him going and kept him with his studies for the rest of his life. And like I say in the book, it's interesting because Philip K. Dick, not too far away around that time, had the same vision, except Dick was walking to a place he used to ride, and he looked up, and then the clouds formed into this metallic demiurge creature looking down on him, laughing at him, and Dick freaked out and ran off. And the parallels that they both, it brought him closer to Jesus, and it brought him closer to studying the occult. So interesting parallels right there.
One thing I wanted to ask, I think I heard you bring up, it's probably in the book as well, is his lightning bolt symbolism. I think you said it kind of came from, it might have been Marvel, which had occult, connotations behind it.
Yeah. I mean, one of his big heroes was Captain Marvel. He was a big comic book reader. And by Captain Marvel, I don't mean the one we know today, the one that you see in the movies. You do. It's the Shazam. That's who Captain Marvel was in the 40s and 50s. and it has the lightning bolt. It's a Shazam. And of all the heroes that became what he idolized, he was open about it, was Captain Marvel. That's the most occult hero. This is a being, you have this guy who sees a wizard, and the wizard gives him the power of Solomon and Hercules and Atlas and Hermes. And he says Shazam, and suddenly, and Elvis just loved it. He used to think it was a story of, especially Captain Marvel Jr., of a kid who can turn into a superhero. And he sort of always said, if he can turn into a superhero, I can. But he did choose the most magical one, and it kept him. So, yeah, the lightning bolt became like his logo. He's taking care of business, and the lightning bolt. It was extremely important. And when you look at his Vegas costume, it makes sense, because when you see him with the short cape and everything else, you realize, wait a second, he's dressing up like Shazam. That's which he was. It was like his hero. So Captain Marvel is fascinating, because the writer behind Captain Marvel, or Shazam, Otto Binder, this guy was steeped into ufology and the occult and all that. I mean, it's a fascinating connection. And I'm writing now the other book, Elvis 2.0, which is David Bowie, where I just realized they're both the same character.
I was going to ask you if you think he influenced David Bowie. I was actually going to ask you that.
He used the lightning bolt too.
Blow by blow. I mean, Bowie they knew each other. Bowie knew what Elvis was doing and tapped into the same powers. In fact, Captain Marvel is behind Bowie too. Elvis, Captain Marvel. There's this very weird nexus with Elvis, Bowie, Captain Marvel, Philip K. Dick, and Ridley Scott. That is, and William Burroughs and all these cats, and it's pretty wild. It's pure magic. It's almost like their own secret society.
I've always thought that about Marvel. They put so much stuff in those movies. I mean, it's almost like ridiculous. There's even the spin-off shows. I don't know if you watched any of them. They're all like on the Disney Plus or whatever. There's one called Moon Knight, and it's oh my goodness, it's just retarded with it. But so you think like David Bowie, he was like on the same kind of like spiritual wave of, because he had kind of like an alter ego, right? Ziggy Stardust and
many,
Great White Duke.
Just like
they reinvented themselves over and over and over again. Actually, Elvis and David Bowie. If you think about it.
Very true. I mean, it's almost like, and Bowie admits it when he started wearing Ziggy Stardust with the jumpsuits. He's like Elvis. It was always, I'm going to tap into the same magic. I mean, Bowie saw him in concert, and he went to his wife. And he's like, wow, women are just throwing themselves at him. And his wife is like, is this the first time you noticed that Elvis was sexy? And Bowie's like, yes, but now I know how. And, and Elvis sent him notes. And the great secret is that before Elvis died, he actually called David Bowie and said, would you produce my next album? And Bowie was like, shit, yeah. But it didn't happen. Bowie was just completely crushed. But yeah, the parallels between them two is it's very freaky, and there were influences, a lot of the same books they were reading, and it's almost two tricksters, two starmen, if you know what I mean,
like that,
two space age messiahs. That's it.
I think Bowie kind of wore it more openly, though. I always had such a thing for him because he was like magical almost. Like even his songs and like some of the lyrics are just like Starman. I always loved him, but Elvis kind of kept it more under wraps. I guess that's why I never knew this stuff about him, because if you look at his songs, really, they are like the more like hand-holdy kind of bubblegum stuff. So, and then you look at David Bowie and it's like, I think I just astral projected after that album. Like
not when Elvis got into that Egyptian deal, though. He got, and then I think they're just channeling the sacred feminine. Like honestly, the way they're dressing, everything, like they're just
good point. Yeah, the androgyne.
What are some of his like top hits besides that? Like his
what?
Like his hits that were besides like Return to Cinder and like stuff like that. Like what were like his Egyptian-y ones?
Well,
maybe I just don't know.
Again, Elvis was looking at the powers underneath them. That's what he wanted, to make it himself and to show these emotions. Again, his concerts were like Dionysian festivals where women were sometimes almost tore him apart. You know, when David Bowie found that secret, he had women also just doing that. But it's really not, you have to listen to some of his gospel music. Like, I would advise you guys listen to the live version of American Trilogy, and you'll be like, now I know what it is to be an American. It's so touching. He talks about the cotton fields and struggling in the working class, and he makes it in a way that only Elvis could do it, or some of like How Great Thou Art. You feel this power that's just beyond you. I think that's Heartbreak Hotel, his first single, which people like John Lennon and Bob Dylan said when they heard that song, it was like a spiritual awakening, is a song about suicide. You know, it's about a guy who goes into a hotel room and it's like, I'm done. It's a very existentialist song. So you see this sort of, you see this hidden all over the place in a lot of his music. And he had a couple of social songs. If I Can Dream, beautiful song that he wrote. In the Ghetto, very powerful song. There's something about Elvis. It's almost like, you hear it for the first time and it's always new. I mean, the only thing I can think of, because we all want newness. We want something like, I've never heard this before. I feel like I'm reborn. It's fresh. Like, first time I ever heard Running with the Devil by Van Halen, I was like, what is this? I've never heard this. I've never heard a sound like that. Or Jimi Hendrix. You hear his riffs and you go, oh my God, this is new. There is something new under the sun. And it just revitalized it. I feel that with Elvis, and in a lot of ways Bowie too. It's like they're tapping deep, like David Gilmour. You're tapping deep into another realm, into an archetypal place, and you're bringing these energies up. Elvis could just do it with his voice, but these guys could do it with their guitar
and his body too. Holy crap!
Yeah.
Well, and also with Elvis, he kind of, crossed all the musical genres: rockabilly, surf music, gospel, country, rock and roll. Like, I mean, he pretty much proliferated, all the tendrils,
Yeah, he threw them all together in a stew and just said, this is it. Heaven and hell.
I feel like
definitely
Johnny
seem to have
Cash
an
kind of
unrivaled-
ripped him off a little bit. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, well, you're probably right. A lot of people, I think, ripped him off a little bit. You know what I mean? Because he had an unrivaled stage presence. Maybe that was magical of sorts. Who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe he had a talisman in his pocket.
That a talisman? Are you happy to see me?
Oh,
exactly.
shit.
That's what Joseph said. Oh, wait,
Joseph
not
Smith
the right
said.
show.
But it was all natural. He was, his hips and everything was nerves. If you look at the Baz Luhrmann, he wasn't trying. He was so nervous. He was an introvert. That's the thing that's freaky. He liked, even later in his career, he could sit outside in his yard and stare at the sky for hours. He liked being alone, and he loved being alone. So the fact he could just turn into this idol, this Dionysus kind of figure just off the bat. I mean, even Jim Morrison was like, I just copied Elvis because he had that, I hate to say that it quality, that cliche, but if you could say if there's an it quality, he had it. It was beyond this world.
Interesting.
I don't know if I was going to say something, but I just wanted to ask you too, because there was something I read, I can't remember where it was now, about him, but it was like like the introverted thing, like he didn't want to like be around people, and like he would like lock himself in his room and stuff. Like he almost like suffered from depression and stuff like that too.
Yeah, he struggled. Again, those demons got him at the end. He just couldn't shake off the death of his mother, Jesse, his divorce from Priscilla, the addictions. I mean, it really got to him, but he loved being alone. One of his favorite rituals, he could sit alone in his room with a candle, and he could meditate himself back in the womb, and he could go even deeper into creation. So he had all these exercises, and I mean, they say on his 40th birthday, his girlfriend said he just sat alone in his room. He just didn't feel like celebrating. I think one of the big themes of the book is that of, and I get this from Paul Levy, his books on Wetiko, is the wounded healer. You find in many cultures around the world, all over the globe, the shaman is somebody who's been broken. They've had a near-death experience, they've had trauma, they're diseased, and this opens the channels of communication. And this person becomes the shaman, and they can heal you, not despite their wounds and their trauma, but because of it. And they feel in their heads that if I heal my trauma, I will lose my powers, and I can't serve the tribe. I can't be the person who heals you. And it's very tragic. And you see that, I mean, we see that with rock stars all the time. It's their tragedy, their wounds. We know they're going to die and implode, but they keep healing us and giving us good music. And that's the wounded healer trope. And in fact, as I show in my book, in certain cultures, the shaman always ends up as a drug addict, broken down, fat old guy, because not only are you the wounded healer, but you're carrying these energies, these powers. You're going to the spirit world. There you go. Bingo. Exactly. And it just destroys you. And the tribe's like, well, that's your job. You know, you need a shaman. And the shaman's like, yeah, this is what I signed up for. I'm going to die young, but what do you know, it's
a hell of a ride.
Let's have a party.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just happened. And I say Elvis was our shaman. He was the one that had to pay the price to heal us.
You had mentioned real quick, because I kind of got lost on the thought when you mentioned it. Did you say something about him having like an experience like with the womb and meditating with a candle?
Yeah,
I've actually mentioned that experience myself on the show a few times.
Get out of here.
Yeah. That one of my experiences was just meditating across from a candle, and like, yeah, where I was like, I went somewhere else, and whenever I came out of my meditation, I was like, yo, that was like, I honestly thought like I had that experience. It was really fucking weird, actually. Wow. Yeah. So when you just said that now, I was like, oh, okay. I was like, I guess I'm not the only like person saying that shit.
I'm too scared to try it.
Yeah. It's very weird. I'm sure I've probably mentioned it on somebody's show here, actually.
Like where you were in the womb?
Right? Jen wants to talk to them.
Yeah. I think I've maybe mentioned it on Jen. Well, that's what I mean. I remember having a certain visual and just like the way I felt, and afterwards I was like, the only thing that makes sense is that was like me in the womb. It was just really weird. Or it's like I had this knowing that that's what it was when I came out of the meditation.
Yeah, Elvis was absurd. He was obsessed with birth and death. I mean, he used to go to morgues for fun and see people. He went with Priscilla all the time. They'd watch
just like on a date. Let's go to the morgue.
Yeah,
He's doing something weird there.
He's
freakier.
a guy. That one.
He gets freakier. One time that's in their book.
Don't tell me he's a necrophile.
No, he saw there was a dead baby and Priscilla starts crying. So they both sit there just praying forever for this child's soul to go there. And he used to have he loved watching dead people be embalmed, including friends. And he would just sit there and talk, but that's the job of the shaman. They have to know death and burial. He used to love hanging around at cemeteries, watching horror movies. Just that's what he did for fun. In fact, guess what? After the Tate LaBianca murders, guess who showed up at the Cielo house a few days later? Elvis. Yes.
No, he's no.
Dude, I don't know about that.
That's what I mean, a shaman has to be around the dead and around the children.
But
I was gonna say
that is bugged out.
Make a comparison from that time period. I think even generations past his death many people have been copying him, of course. But at that time period, imagine how many people were copying him or attempting to even. But I was just looking at Jim Jones, and he, I think, tried to use that whole persona to, in of course, a much darker way.
Definitely the haircut.
I can't help but see that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's definitely got the Elvis look going on.
Yeah, for sure.
That, like Roy
Okay,
Orbison.
Miguel, I got to ask you something, and please don't get offended or kick me off the video chat because I just gotta ask you. All right.
Cancel her.
Oh,
There are rumors. All right, rumors. I don't know. I wasn't there. That Elvis was kind of, he was into little boys and stuff. Do you think that there's
Yikes.
any credibility to that?
No, I don't think so. I don't. As far as I looked, I don't see it. Again, I try to go to reliable source. There's so much. Hate to use the word misinformation because I sound like a politician, but there's so much gossipy, weird stuff, and so far I don't see anything that does that. I mean, it's very known that he used to get hit on by men, and he'd simply be like, "Hey, man, it's all cool. I'm not my bag," all that stuff. So,
Well, I have to ask just because the people who listen to my show are gonna definitely wonder why I didn't. Because that's the thing. That's the thing. People know about that rumor, and they're like, "Dude, Elvis was into he wasn't having sex with his wife, and he was probably into little boys, and he had this weird femininity thing going on." So I mean, people have speculated.
Yeah, no, I don't see that anywhere. And he was never. I mean, you're talking about a person who wasn't alone. You talk about a person whose own bodyguards betrayed him and wrote a tell-all books because they wanted to bring him down. Nothing like that has ever come up. He was friends. He was friends with a bisexual guy who was friends with James Dean, and they became very close. And when his mother died, this guy they moved a bed in his room to watch over Elvis and all that. That's the closest. There's also a time in the army where he was very upset and he heard about this thing called aromatherapy. Again, back then it was but he flew this guy in from Australia or somewhere, and the guy's doing the aromatherapy, and the guy grabs Elvis by the, but Elvis freaked out, kicked him out, and then the guy tried to blackmail him, and the army got involved, but he was cleared after a long investigation. So that's about as far as I know, that's about as exciting as it gets.
Maybe he was asexual.
He was very friends with Liberace, but it was very platonic. Liberace also lost his twin. So Liberace gave him ideas like, this is how you cope with the pain. And Liberace in the 50s was like, dude, you got to wear jumpsuits. It's the next big thing. And Elvis was like, nah, it'll never be in fashion. And,
Yeah. Well, and with the esoteric, when they're studying and trying to, they stop that because they're trying to keep their power. So it's like a whole thing with, the whole esoteric side of the studies. So it makes sense.
Being asexual.
Well,
he was very sexual. He was very sexual. He was very Hermes, but I show him he's very much like the archetype of the androgyne because he had his feminine and masculine powers. That's why he was into style. He understood women. It's what we used to call them metrosexuals in my day, my Gen X. He was a
I haven't heard that in a minute.
I don't mean he was asexual in general. I mean, if he went through bouts of asexualism, it was probably because he was studying and trying to be in the purification process. That's all I mean.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. When he was really into spirituality, he would disengage from relationships. In fact, it used to piss women off because women would be like, I'm going to have this notch on my bedpost called Elvis Presley. They'd get to his room. He's like, can we read a book? Let's meditate.
Oh my God.
And they'd be like, no, no. Happened a lot.
Hey, I'm going to get with Elvis. And he's like, yeah, let's meet at the morgue and do some weird, you know how to turn a girl on. Morgue stuff.
The chartlegram.
Let's go.
Well, I was going to ask earlier when we were talking. What we were talking the occult geographies of Memphis. I was going to ask you, did Elvis have any affinities for the ancient mound sites of America? Because Memphis is deep in mound territory, and so was his childhood down there in Mississippi.
Well,
he grew up on the mound.
He's my 10th cousin, and so I am Mormon heritage. I'm telling you, there's some Mormon up in that boy. I don't know.
He's got some of that Mormon mound.
Just saying.
Mormon mound.
They got that mound love.
In
Yeah.
voodoo.
Mountain love. They got that mountain love.
Not those
Yeah, no,
mounds. the
No,
other
I know.
mounds.
I know. It's just-
Oh my god. Not as
Okay,
far
no.
as I know. Not as far as I know. I mean,
Nah.
again,
It's
it's
interesting.
not
You
like
should see where his stuff is
if
built.
he had to go anywhere, it had to be in the middle of the night. If he went anywhere, he'd have to have a big entourage. So there was a lot of things Elvis just could not see.
do.
Again, he couldn't. He couldn't go to church. Even in the 50s, he had to stop going to church. He had
What
because
Ley lines where he built his place and stuff.
Dude, did
Any
you
of
know
that?
Elvis was born on the 33rd parallel? You know, all that weirdness
there you
about
go.
like people who are born on the 33rd parallel. So
Yeah,
I don't know about
Steven-
that, Heidi, but like I know he was born on like a weird.
Wild.
yeah. Steven Snyder, I did a show with him, and he talked about that's kind of his thing, mountains and
Right.
parallels, and it's not my forte.
Oh yeah, I've had a number of mountain conversations with Recluse. He's very very knowledgeable in the subjects.
And he goes to these places. He doesn't just write
Oh,
it.
yeah.
And he travels and he feels the energy and he digs around. So yeah, we've had a couple of show on Elvis too. One on that, and one, of course, we had to have a long one to dispel the whole. Was he a servant of the Jews? Which, of course, there's lots of literature. So we had to spend an hour dispelling that one.
What does that even mean?
Exactly. I'm not familiar with that one, so that's an interesting theory.
A
I guess.
servant of the Jew, like what?
Oh, because he wore a
probably the
hexagram.
Caesarians, right? Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
I was
you
like, what
have
is
to
he, a
presume, right?
Hebrew slave or something? Like, what is that supposed to mean?
That he was, created by Jewish bankers to corrupt society.
Caesarians
what-
again.
Right.
The damn Caesarians.
Yeah, they
Hey,
called
well,
It's the Jesuits, if not. Don't worry.
Yeah, it's somebody. Yeah. But there's books written about it on papers. I've
Really?
read them, but they don't hold up to, no. He had Jewish blood. He had very close Jewish friends. He became friends as a kid with an Orthodox rabbi, but Elvis was, he was his own person, own destiny,
Not Roy Cohn, I hope.
No,
I hope that wasn't his friend.
that was his friend. Shut up.
Well,
I'm
but
messing
his
around. I'm being an ass. I said, I
Oh
hope
my God. I was going to say, if those two are friends, I'm getting out of this
yeah.
podcast.
now Elvis's manager, from what I understand, he had intelligence links. He had all these. He didn't have any ID. That was one of the reasons they couldn't go overseas. It was kind of a mystery as to who this guy really was.
It is indeed.
Ooh.
Colonel Parker, yes, that was his manager, and he was an illegal immigrant, and
Played
he
by
was,
Tom Hanks.
Oh, I was gonna ask if that was him. I was gonna ask if that was the guy.
Terrible
that's-
job by Hanks, but yeah, that was him. So
What did you think of that movie? Did you like it?
Yes, that-
It was good.
Did you think it was like historically accurate?
some things aren't. Some things are. It briefly talks about Captain Marvel and Elvis and going to black churches, but doesn't touch on his occultism. You have to watch Sofia Coppola's movie Priscilla. That spends about 10 minutes. Elvis driving everybody crazy with his ideas and she being furious at him and all that. But yeah, Parker, he was a carnival guy. He wasn't even a real colonel, and somehow he latched on to Elvis. And I talk about the book that was almost fated because, you've got in alchemy, you've got Hermes, that power, that creative, naughty power, but then you've got Saturn, numbers and boundaries and all that. And they were perfect. Or even in Steiner with Ahriman and Lucifer, you got Lucifer, the creative power, and then you've got Ahriman, the numbers, the boundaries. When you can get those together in the balance, anything's possible. Just like the androgyne, if we can get your male and female energies right, as the ancients said, you are godlike. So those two work together, and that's the story. That's one of the theories that Elvis never toured, because Parker would have he would have gotten thrown in an El Salvadorian prison. No, well, back then, who knows what it would have been. He would have been kicked out. But the problem too is, I don't know about that, because He did go to Canada in the 50s to tour. And remember, Elvis was in the army for 2 years.
Right.
And Parker had no problem staying in the United States, you know, crunching numbers, making deals. So I don't know if you would have had a problem with Elvis touring, but I guess you would have had to explain to Elvis, because that's a secret even Elvis never found out about. You know, that's something that happened in the late 70s when people finally discovered who Parker was. And it's still a mystery what his background was.
Yeah.
Possibly Austrian?
No, he was Dutch.
Dutch? Okay. I knew it was somewhere over there. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess Austin Powers would have been furious, right? Evil Dutch.
At least he
maybe it was
Dutch,
his
right?
handler.
Can't trust the Dutch.
Elvis's handler.
According to Austin Powers.
Yeah. But he was something else. I mean, it is true. This guy, I mean, Elvis made $4 billion from 1955 to 19. Think about that inflation. I mean, Taylor Swift and P. Diddy, that's money they couldn't make. He probably made, that's like $20 billion today. And Elvis, of course, just blew it. He never invested, Parker made 20% of that, and Parker died penniless because he was such a gambling freak. I mean, it's like they both just fell apart at the end.
Perhaps a good magical lesson for why you should not pursue that path of Hode after 40. I don't know.
After 40.
Little magic joke.
Are you saying that Elvis was a washed up loser?
No, but it really, this is something I've been thinking about a lot, Julia, is like magic's really about archetypes, like a large part. Like even look at above you right now, the way Nick even has it set up. It's like I'm between two polarities. So it's a lot about like how we arrange, I mean, you know this, how we arrange the universe around us. So, but your most powerful tool is the way you live your life, like the ritual that you embody. So, right. So if Elvis is passing the point of being a prince archetype, then he should, the idea is that you would gracefully transition into one of the other male archetypes on the tree. But if you're very comfortable in a Sephira, and this often happens to male magicians, they get very comfortable in a Sephira because we're denser than women. It's not a slight against men. It's just like it's a kind of, well, it's a Buddhist joke, but it's also true in a way, because women can get pregnant, so they have negative space, right? So they're considered less dense. That's really the idea. So a man should transition, but it's harder for us. So if we've played the prince our whole life, we're always going to draw from that Sephira. That's kind of my thinking. I don't know. Maybe Nick or Miguel will correct me, but that's sort of how I think of it.
I can see what you're saying.
And that would also, sorry, Nick.
Go ahead.
No, I just want to say that also explains like what Heidi said about him, like always searching out, and even the rumor that you brought up, it would make sense that because the polarity that he would need to balance him out would be like a daughter archetype. That doesn't mean someone too young, but maybe by our conventions in 2025, it would be like a Southern, like what he was thinking in like the 60s in the South is obviously very different than where we're thinking. So maybe 16, he would like a younger girl, like some slightly androgynous perhaps, or like Elisa Marie, who's, as we discussed, she has a Babylon energy.
His daughter does?
Well, the wife did. When they first got together, she has that, like you brought it up, there was such a great point, we all agreed, the Tuesday Welds, like she's this kind of the dark princess to Tuesday Welds, like a queen of the stars, you could say.
The one you want to watch is his granddaughter, Riley Keough. I don't know if you guys have watched the movie Under the Silver Lake, probably one of the most esoteric movies I've seen, but she's a very accomplished actress and very powerful.
Does she sing or anything?
I don't think so. No, she's mostly an actress. I mean, she's been I think was she in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood? I think she was in it briefly. So.
Really? Oh, that's interesting, because that's about like the Manson stuff, and apparently Elvis made himself known around those parts.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I've always wondered about her just because of the Michael Jackson stuff. And yeah, I mean, was it her son that killed himself, or it was her son that killed himself?
Yeah, Riley's brother. Yeah. Again, the curse.
Is she into
that's what Heidi was saying.
But then again, we've got one without the other. Right back to the beginning.
Right, exactly.
Maybe they're breaking generational curses. Maybe he was the last one, and
seems like they're living it through it. Yeah, because then he was the one that carried it on. So I don't know. It seems like if she's in esoteric films and all these different things, it just depends on what path she's on. But I don't know.
Do you know if Riley is into Scientology?
I am not sure. I don't think so. I mean, I know Priscilla and Lisa Marie, I think, left before it was they did get out. I'm not sure. I hope once the book starts selling and it makes the rounds, I do want to reach out to her and say, hey, what do you think?
The reason I asked is something I actually learned from JJ, and I have noticed it myself now, that she did a movie with Topher Grace, and I know he was in that 70s show, and that was like pretty much like all Scientology people. And I've noticed that a lot of silent Scientology people tend to do movies with other Scientology people. Under the Silver Lake, Topher Grace was in that with her. So I when I saw Topher Grace, I thought of Scientology, and I knew we were talking about Scientology, so that's why I just asked. Because I just looked up the movie now, because I was like, I never heard of that.
Says she quit Scientology as of 2023 and is now just spiritually not affiliated with anyone, but she has some interesting tattoos about her brother.
What you're saying is independent Scientology.
Or a mixture of all of them.
Yeah, look at the movie. She was in Mad Max. She was in, you guys got to watch Under the Silver Lake.
Yeah, we're going to check that out.
Sasquatch Sunset. I don't know. She played Sasquatch or Bigfoot. She was in that movie. It was in Amazon where it's like a ripoff of Fleetwood Mac. I forget what's the name of it. But yeah, she's been in a lot of movies. I'm just looking over here.
Interesting. Was there anything else that anybody wanted to ask before we wrap it up?
Super interesting.
Oh, sorry, Heidi, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'll just say I do think that the badge thing was interesting from a magical perspective, because you could consider like badges to have a kind of Kabbalistic or Masonic, which is obviously also Kabbalah, just in a slightly different maybe context. But yeah, so if the collection of badges, you could also liken that to the collection of degrees, like magical order degrees, and so yeah, exactly.
The police are the widow's sons too.
Yeah, I would agree.
Is there no help for the widow's son? JJ. Oh, sorry.
Is that another Mormon thing too?
Yes.
Oh, jeez.
Masons, Mormons, all the same.
Yeah. Allegedly the last
Age
words of
Masons.
Joseph Smith.
Yeah.
You said that's the last words of Joseph Smith.
Yeah, it really was.
Yeah.
Allegedly, really.
Wait, what was it? What was his last words?
It's a Masonic cry for help. Is there no help for the widow's son? And he was a Mason, but also he was screwing everybody's wives. So they were kind of
yeah, sick. Yeah, but apparently so was Elvis, right? He was screwing everybody's wife and
sometimes
Mormon ties.
Oh boy,
that's interesting. Wow.
I wonder. I have a question. I wonder. You mentioned the non-touch healing. That again. Now, actually, I bet all of us have experienced Reiki, at least here, right? That's a common non-touch healing practice. I wonder what is one of the more striking experiences of maybe the non-touch healing, or just in general of his telepathic powers. What were one of those stories that were really striking?
God, there's so many. Yeah, I mean, he was able to manipulate weather. He could make objects move. Again, astral travel. Stories of him creating force fields. God, there's so many, but the healing was very important to him because of where he came from. So he was just a healing freak, and it was mostly the blue light is very important throughout the book. When Elvis was born, his father went outside to have a cigarette, and this blue alien light appeared over the house and froze all sound, and the wind stopped. And Vernon, his father, freaked out. He was having a cigarette, ran in while Gladys was having was in labor. So the blue light followed, and you see that all through Elvis's life. You know, you see blue in so many of his songs. His biggest hits were like Blue Hawaii and GI Blues. The day he died, he was wearing blue pajamas. Oh, this blue light I show in the book. It's blue is everywhere. When he healed, he would always imagine a blue light. And I've done shows with like James True on the blue light. You know, humans only discovered the blue light a few thousand years ago, and people with blue eyes are freaks. We only appeared later in history because of some catastrophe. But anyway, yeah, green too. Yeah, you'd have to put green too. But blue was important, so he was a healing beast. I mean, Priscilla says he could heal her headaches at a touch. He could heal people's hurt backs. I mean, he did, and then sometimes they were just incredible. Like the one time they were in Colorado snowboarding, and they're having fun, and a person, his entourage, hits a pole, breaks his leg, and they're all freaking out. We got to take him to the hospital. And Elvis like pushes him back. It's like, I don't have time for this. Puts his hands on his legs and heals his broken leg. There was another time where he's driving around in his limo in Memphis, and he sees a bus over the sidewalk, and the driver's outside, like grabbing his chest, having a heart attack. And Elvis goes up to him, puts his hand, he's like, you're going to be all right. And he does again, the blue light healing, and heals him from his heart attack. He could heal a friend of his child had a really bad fever. Elvis like leaves his house, goes to his friend's house, and puts his hand on the kid, and the fever breaks. I mean, it's just the instances are baffling, and there are a lot, and they're incredible. And again, there were always eyewitnesses there. There was 2 or 3 people present when Elvis was doing his healing incredible power, but he couldn't heal himself. Again, he just couldn't. He did use certain techniques, like once he had a sore throat, and he used some theosophical Alice Bailey spell, and he was able to heal his throat and this and that. But for the most part, yeah, he did it for other people.
That's the kind of guy you want to have around. Jeez.
For sure.
They're usually a hot mess, though. I'm just saying, if you got that heater.
He cured a hangover, so after Saturday night.
Wonderful.
That's a plus.
Terrific guy. I'm on board.
Not to get into it too much, because we're all wrapping it up, but I would even think, Miguel, haven't you even noticed sometimes some sort of blue light experience even amongst occultist stories? I mean, even Crowley.
Very predominant.
Yeah, you will hear about that every once in a while.
Yeah, and UFO encounters.
Yeah.
Light is always on the ship. Whitley Strieber talks about when the visitors come, a blue light would appear. So as I'm doing the research, I'm like, oh my God, this blue thing is all over the place. And occultism, ufology, mysticism, Krishna was blue. You just see it everywhere.
Yeah, something interesting with that. But thank you all again for coming on. That was really interesting talk. That was amazing, Miguel. I appreciate it. Real quick, Miguel, let everybody know where they can find your stuff and whatever you want to plug, please.
Sure. Yeah, and thanks for great questions, guys. You did a great job. I really appreciate it. Good convo. Right now, I would send people to just miguelconnor.com, my name, because you go to the website and it's like 2 roads. One is the Aeon Byte, my Gnostic stuff. The other one is my, Substack, Elvis, books, all that. So send people to miguelconnor.com and decide where you want to go. You can subscribe to my Substack, order the book online, or look at all my social media. So that's the place to go.
Awesome. Thank you so much, my man. I really appreciate it. Everybody else, you can check their stuff out. Their links are in the bottom. That is the end of another Occult Rejects. And until the next one, everybody be well. Later.